Hello and welcome to post-match reaction to France versus Wales in the 2019 Six Nations. It finished 1924, but it was a game of two halves, as the old cliches go. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, your best place for predictions and opinion. And yes, here we are with live post-match reaction. Hopefully Mary will be joining me in a second if she can get her Skype working. I'll also be back tomorrow with post-match reaction to Ireland versus England. But let's start getting into this game first. It was wet. It was definitely a wet game, and that certainly played into how the match eventuated. I know the commentators were very much about how you can't handle in the wet, but we've seen teams do it before. So what I think it was is it just added an extra level of pressure, and then the pressure was what told on various players, and that's what we saw during this game. Initially, we had a little bit of a box-kicking exchange before France really dominated the vast majority of that first half. I mean, some of the stats at half-time territory was 70% to France, 30% to Wales, and you can see also the amount of play. So 80 passes were made by France compared to just 29 by Wales in that first half. But to give you an indication, so yes, France, the actual number of runs wasn't that different, but France were able to handle the ball much better, and they also put some great. The way they got that territory and they put the pressure on Wales was through their kicking. They kicked it 21 times from hand in that first half, compared to only 11 by Wales. Now, that's the kind of numbers that you would expect in a whole game sometimes. So, yes, it was definitely a wet game, and France adapted their game style in that first half much better than Wales did. That is for certain. It only took them 6 minutes for France to get over the line. Signup drove over. He was playing out wide, kind of an old Kieran Reid style number 8 kind of role. After several phases by the French, they'd really attacked that blind side early on, using the big pack to get over that game line. Wales, I think, were expecting it to some extent. You saw that Wales had packed that blind side with defenders, and yes, we are being joined by Mary. So, good morning, good evening. How are you doing?
Good, very good.
So yes, just talking about the first half there. That initially we saw France really using that big pack of theirs to get over that gain line, especially down the blind side initially, to see Signup go over for that first try, and it was all Wales. It was all France in the early stages. Oh, okay.
Hello.
Okay, it sounds like we might have some sound issues.
Yeah, we're having problems.
Okay, I'm going to plough on, and as and when you can feel like you can butt in, please do so. But I mean, the kicking was very poor. We had a poor conversion there that was missed, that really shouldn't have been. And then in 10 minutes we had another penalty kick missed from France. But it was interesting to see that France were mixing it up. It wasn't just one-out rugby to their big players. They were also putting it wide. They were also putting the kicks in, and different types of kicks as well. We had box kicks, we also had long kicks as well in there. And so France were really getting that going. The first time Wales got into the French half, there was a penalty straight away, and Gareth Anscombe missed a long penalty. And basically in that first half, I think we only got one kick that was successful, and that was a drop goal. It wasn't windy, wasn't it, Mary? So I'm surprised that we had there were such poor kicking.
There was absolutely no wind whatsoever. Can you hear me at all?
Yes.
Okay. No, there was no wind whatsoever. I'm not really quite sure the reason as to why so many penalties were missed, especially some of the easier ones that were in front of goal. But I was quite surprised by the way that the French played in the first half. I really wasn't expecting that at all. Some of the big players like Picamole, Iterera, they had absolutely outstanding games. Outstanding first half, not an outstanding game. But the missed penalties will really come back to haunt Morgan Parra. They were just, how many points did he leave? 9 points in the first half on the field. It was not good at all. Wales, maybe a bit unlucky with some of their playing, but they weren't at the races in the first half whatsoever.
They weren't, and we had France mixing it up very well, using the blind side, using the forwards on the open side, going wide, doing different kicks. Wales were much more traditional. It was much more 1 out, 2 outs in one direction across the pitch and then back across the other side of the pitch. Not only were they not being able to put phases together, but they were being very predictable as well.
Yeah, very, very predictable. And maybe Jacques Brunel had focused on that, and that was part of the game plan for France that I think took Wales by surprise in the first half. They had no responses to it whatsoever. But it was also interesting the amount of penalties that France didn't give away in the first half. They were very, very disciplined, which is quite unusual for them, or at least I feel it's quite unusual for them.
Yeah, at the half-time it was 3 penalties to 6 penalties, 3 to France, or 3 given up by France, 6 given up by Wales, and all those ones by France were early. And one of the things we've talked about in the past about England is they'll give up early penalties to learn where the ref's got his lines that day. And that might have been part of it. I think the France adapted to Wayne Barnes very well. It helps that Wayne Barnes speaks French, which was good to see during the game as well. So it's easy for them to understand. So that was all very good. I mean, the one area that Wales did go well on was with Liam Williams. He was tidy at the back, made a couple of breaks. My big kind of criticism of him was when he had that try disallowed. Is he had Jonathan Davis outside him, he should have given it rather than cut back inside himself, I believe. I think he was a little bit selfish at times with the ball and not looking for his support runners. No,
I would totally agree with that, yeah.
And the other thing that for me happened around that was we got a very quick replay of that try, which obviously then caused Wayne Barnes to step in front and have review it with his TMO. I think this brings back this whole big screen replays by the host broadcaster, giving a home advantage, and I think there needs to be clearer rules around that. I think it's unfair that you'll get certain plays replayed very quickly and other plays not replayed or replayed very much when it's too late to actually do anything about it. So I think that needs to be that should be cleaned up.
It should be, yeah. Mind you, at the time, I could see definitely that he had knocked it on. But you're quite right, because they were lining up that penalty. The conversion would have been taken, but once it came up on the big screen, that was it. He had to go to the TMO, or whether the TMO called him. But that was.
That felt like it was going to be a big turning point in the game, because they had that. They then gave up 2 penalties. We then had Huget going in the corner with North making a real bad defensive call to cut inside when that player was already tackled, leaving Huget with that the overlap to go over. But again, obviously scoring out wide, the kick didn't go over. But again, a good play by France to use the full width of the pitch and to mix up their play to find the gap.
Yeah.
So that really takes us to half-time, except in the last minute, they have
the drop goal.
The drop goal. At the time, I thought it was a penalty, but it wasn't. It was a free kick from Anscombe. But he kicks it. He keeps it in play. A couple of phases, and then France put over a long drop goal. Wales should have tapped it, kept control of the ball for a couple of phases. Now, sure, they'd been knocking on, but to give France another opportunity to score, I thought was a poor decision at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly was. And again, it was one of those situations where, especially with Lopez, you never know what he's going to do, where he's going to go. But he did well. Yeah, the boys did well to get that over. He really did, to give them that lead going into, it was 13-0 going into half time?
16-0 at half time.
16-0, yeah, 13-0, and then 16-0 going into half time. Yeah.
And Wales needed half time. In that last five or so minutes, we had knock-ons, they kicked the ball out in the full, they lost one of their own line-outs, they gave up penalties. They were in total disarray at that point, and they needed to get in the sheds and be sorted out. There was a lack of leadership out there on the pitch today from them.
Totally. Yeah.
Come out in the second half.
I would have loved to have had a dressing room cam to hear what Gareth had to say. It must have been something else in there at half time.
It was, and the second. So for that first half, as we say, all the stats on the French side. I mean, the other one that I had down here was turnovers. 6 turnovers by France, 11 by Wales. Yeah. Just shows, Wales just did nothing right in that first half, as well as missing their 2 penalties that they had opportunities for. So, yes, there was France left 7 points out on the pitch in that first half, but Wales also left 6 points out on the pitch. So it should have been 23-6 at that point, but it wasn't. It was just 16-0. Come out the second half, and Gareth Davis really led the side from, I thought at that point, really started to hassle and caused some French errors. And then we had a wonderful try that he scored after a Josh Adams break. Now, at this point, and as someone pointed out, that this was when France had an injured player on the floor. He spotted where that gap was. And executed it very well, but it took an injured player really for Wales to find a gap and break that French defence. That French defence worked very hard today. It
did. I think I've lost you again.
You thought you lost me? Don't worry, you're still here. We then.
I don't know. It's the wind. We've had really, really bad wind around here. Not in Paris, but here. Yeah, no, that was wonderful. It was wonderful play by Josh Adams to set Williams up for that try. It really was. 6-7 minutes into the second half, it was very, very badly needed, and it turned the whole game around.
It did. And then up until soon after that, the French back three had been having a really good game. We'd had Huge obviously scored that try. I forgot the name of the other winger, but he was getting up and claiming lots of kicks.
Peno.
And then also the fullback was cleaning things up, Maximon as well. But then
you have some people playing together. All of the French backs played for either Toulouse or Clermont, and so they have a habit of all playing together. They know their games well, so that's where the French backs played together as a coherent team. But
which makes a change.
Exactly, nice change.
But then Wales got a penalty advantage, and I thought Parks had basically kicked the ball to nothing. It really was a kind of like, we'll take the 3 points, kick through. But Huget made an absolute mess of picking up the ball, fumbled it over his try line, and George North was there to touch the ball down off that spilled ball. A very soft try, and suddenly it's a 2-point game.
Yeah, and you could see it happening. You just kind of knew, this is not going to end well, and it didn't end well.
And it didn't end well. And one of the things that people will be saying about this, even though that Wales did come back from 16-0 down to win this game 19-24, is that what people will point out that we had of the 3 tries, the first one required an injured player to create a gap in the defensive line. We then had a fumble over the back line that George North scores, and then George North also scores from an intercept. This was hardly Wales suddenly playing flowing, attacking, line-breaking rugby. It was them taking their chances when they came, but still not dominating.
It wasn't convincing. Yeah,
no,
it wasn't convincing stuff. There wasn't. There didn't seem to be many of the tries didn't really come from playmaking, as you say. It was through errors or just luck, and you take your luck. There's days when that works for you, and it worked in the second half.
It did. So, I mean, I put out a tweet saying, "Is that end of the pitch cursed?" Because the way that Wales got that penalty advantage was by a knock on from someone not claiming a kick. So he wasn't under particular pressure. At the scrum, then they got the penalty advantage, and then they had a kick through. So a bunch of things had happened to get there that weren't necessarily great sort of attacking play. I mean, we had another missed penalty as well. For France, which took it up to 10 points, missed with the boot when Dan Biggar lost the plot, and we did see Wales losing the plot occasionally in this game, losing their composure. They looked like they were going through the phases, had things sorted out, and then suddenly one of the players would go, I'm going to try, I'm not sure what to do here, and he'd get caught behind the gain line, and suddenly France were back into it.
Yeah.
Whereas it felt like when France made those similar kind of errors occasionally that were less obvious or less frequent, it was more because they were actually under pressure from the Welsh attack. I think the Wales lost their one, and that also came from we saw Gareth Davies do the exact same thing, claim the ball, drop the ball backwards off a kick, realise he hasn't got time, tries to shovel the ball on, gives an intercept that then goes back for a drop goal that gets charged down, that gets collected, and it was an absolute comedy of kind of little errors.
It was.
And they were very lucky to come up. Wales were very lucky to come away from that, just giving up 3 points from a penalty. Really. Yeah. My big question at that point was, Liam Williams was off injured at that point. If he'd been on the pitch, would he have come and claimed that? Because he did tidy up most things at the back, and maybe that was they were missing that halfpenny Liam Williams fullback person who is solid under high ball at that point.
I think so. I think they seem to miss something in defence today, Wales, and I'm not quite sure it was. And there seemed to be players, I really didn't hear the names mentioned, that didn't seem to do an awful lot. It was very haphazard, and they were incredibly lucky with, as you said, 2 of the tries that they actually scored. So it will be interesting to see how they go forward from that. It's even more interesting to see how France goes forward from that.
It will, and we'll just knocked off the last try then. So France claimed one of their contestable box kicks. We're 71 minutes now, so the clock is starting to tell. But France are leading 19-17, and suddenly they decide to change their tactics and decide, you know what, we've done a box kick down the right. The Welsh defence will be sucked over. We have an overlap on the left-hand side of the pitch, but we're halfway down. We're in the middle of the park, and they did. There was probably a 3-on-1 with George North over there, but they spun the ball wide and did a massive miss pass, which allowed George North to pick it off and run it in. I could see what they were trying to do, but the execution for it was totally wrong.
Yeah, totally wrong.
There was one other disallowed try during that as well for I've gone blank. Number 8 for Wales, but we had Alwyn Jones going beyond the ruck, creating the space that tried to happen. From Moriarty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't remember who.
Moriarty was one that went over. And when we look at the penalties conceded, 5 by France overall, 10 by Wales. France did have 2 other free kicks as well, but 5-10. Welsh discipline really needs to be improved going forwards, because they're not. If they give up those number of penalties against someone like Ireland, they're going to get hurt pretty badly.
Yeah. Don't worry, Wales will pick up their game against Ireland, that's for sure. That's the last game of it's the last game of the Six Nations too. But I was quite surprised with the French discipline today. They actually did quite well, because normally that would be a reverse penalty count. Normally they would be 10 and Wales would be 5. So they did quite well. And they didn't have a knock on, I don't think, until about the 50th minute, France. So there was some things. The first half they played exceptional rugby, and the second half, well, they just did to France, and we
they
never
did.
know.
And to say they didn't knock it on until that time, Wales had 11 scrums in this game, which shows you there was a bunch of French knock-ons somewhere this, and it was the second half. But whilst Wales stood up well against this big French pack at scrum time, at line-out time it was a different story entirely. Wales only won 4 out of their 7 line-outs, a 57% completion, whereas France were 9 from 9. A couple of those were disrupted, to be fair. They weren't necessarily clean ball, but they definitely, France definitely dominated that. Another point about that second half, if you remember at half time we mentioned that the turnovers were 6-11 in France's favour. By the end of the game it was 18-16, which shows you that again that Wales cleaned up their act in that second half, and France really struggled with that pressure entirely even, in that second half.
They seemed to lose the way. The people that were the players that were leading them in the first half, like Picamole and Ituera, they seemed to totally lose their way in the second half. They didn't seem to be able to command like they were doing. Ituera really tried, and when Gallardo went off, there didn't seem to be anybody left on the field to bring them along, to lead them along. And that's a big issue. That is a big issue for France. It was last year, and it doesn't seem to have improved this year either.
Yeah, when we did the preview of on Tuesday night, when we went through each of the squads, the thing that jumped out to me about this French squad is that their first 15 have got caps, or in quite most places, but quite often there's only the two of the hookers had next to no caps at all.
Yeah.
Again, the backup props there was a lot of debutants coming through there as well, and you could see there's a lot of new players coming through, which is perfect when you're 4 years out from a Rugby World Cup. It's not so great in Rugby World Cup year. They're at the wrong stage of their cycle.
Definitely.
But we should probably talk about players we've already talked about. Is that back three? So Murdard got through 19 carries for 70 metres. Huget 7 carries for 70 metres. They were the two big carriers distance-wise, and then Piccamoles with 14 carries in this game got through a lot of work as well. For Wales, unsurprisingly, I haven't seen the number yet, but George North only did 5 carries but 66 metres. Obviously, we had that intercept.
Okay.
Liam Williams with 10 carries for 88. Again, we've mentioned that he made a couple of good breaks in that first half in particular. And Josh Adams with 8 carries for 76 metres. Again, he had that good break in the second half. That was a decent part of that. So a lot of it's out there. But amazingly enough, you've got Williams, the scrum half, also got through 8 carries, which shows you that he was sniping and very busy. A busy scrum half, because he came off on like 56 minutes or something anyway, so he wasn't on the pitch that long.
Yeah, and especially coming in himself and Anscombe, they did. I know Anscombe missed some of the penalties, but they did play quite well together. They both played together with Cardiff Blues, and it showed. And William, he did extremely well. I know some people were maybe surprised he was picked, but no, he really merited his place.
He did, and he's a he's a young gun. With Gareth Davis being injured and not being able to practice, and obviously Rhys Webb has left Wales, so can't be selected. They needed someone to step up like that, and he did so. Defensively, the big shifts by the players you'd expect. Tipuric, 19 tackles, none missed. Moriarty with 17, Navidi with 16. I mean, both back rows are very industrious in this game.
Extremely.
And we should probably also... Corey Hill came on and did a big shift, as did Lee as well, and Ken Owens. For France, and Fofana had a big say defensively. He actually led the tackling out of all the players, was the only player to have to make 10 tackles out of this. But again, Picamoles, is it Iturra, the flanker? Turia. Those two got through a bunch of tackles as well.
A huge amount of work, especially in the first half. Yeah, they were outstanding in the first half. Not quite sure about the second half, but...
Yeah, the name we heard quite a lot was Bamba, actually, the prop. Got through a lot of carries, but didn't go very far. 8 carries for 6 minutes.
Bamba, I saw him play 2 weeks ago. He's part of that France Under-20 World Cup winning team. I saw him play 2 weeks ago with Brive, and I know it's only Pro D2, but he absolutely ploughed through people. Again, he's probably a bit too soon for this World Cup, but again, in 4 years' time, World Cup at home, he'll be a big name to watch.
And that's something we should probably actually talk about. Is that we've got France here selecting somebody from their second division, which is pretty amazing. So he is not. I mean, here's a guy who's had to jump up from second division rugby to international rugby. That's a massive leap. I mean, if you look at the teams that have been promoted, for example, I mean, Perpignan got promoted this season and haven't won a single game in the top 14. So the gap between Pro Div 2 and the top 14 is, I think, probably growing at the moment, and you're seeing those sort of teams just can't make that step up. So he's moving to Lyon next year, I believe, and that'll be very good for his development. But it's very impressive for him to be able to step up and put in a decent shift, not look out of place after what is a big step up for him.
It's a huge step up for him, and he is shining in the Pro D2. It is their second division, and the difference, like you say, Perpignan haven't won a game, and the difference is huge. So even for Brunel to see that and take him along, and I think when he goes to Lyon, he will absolutely he'll shine there next year. Whether he'll make it to Japan will be interesting, because there are quite a few players injured at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see if he gets there. I hope he does, because even in another 9 months he'll have developed even further.
He will, but he's going to have the opportunity over a couple of games now to stake that claim. Which once you're in possession of the jersey, it makes it much harder to take it off you. So, so those are kind of the key points here. The weather didn't suit the team or the style of rugby that Wales are trying to change into, but they lacked leaders to adapt to it and look better in the second half once the coaches had a word. And I think from a French point of view, came out and did it all right in the first half, but showed that as soon as you put under pressure, you can start making mistakes, and perhaps lost their shape also a bit when they started bringing substitutes on, because as you mentioned, that entire back division was from 2 clubs, and I think they lost some of that shape once they had to bring on their substitutes as well. So, Mary, thank you very much for joining. Any final points?
No, I'm really sorry that the link is so bad. Because I can only pick up bits and pieces along the line, and I'm not even quite sure what you're hearing from me, so really sorry about that. This bloody French weather. But no, thank you for the invite, and hopefully the next time, if there is a next time, the link will be a lot clearer. I don't know what's going on.
There will definitely be next time. I've not planned really for the rest of Six Nations, but I'm sure we'll be back on again at some point. And enjoy the game tomorrow, but not too much because I want England to win. And
no, you don't.
And I will be live straight after the England-Ireland game with Russ from the Maul Over podcast, giving you our post-match reaction. Our post-match reaction to Scotland-England last year went down good guns, so do join us for that, even if you do criticise how much we talk about the referee. So anyway, thank you very much for joining us, and
thank you very much, Paul.
There are things up here and down here and all over the place, which on the recording, which give you wonderful videos that the YouTube AI says you'll enjoy, and also how to subscribe to the channel.